Morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I hope. This is Michael Leister from the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Board. Thank you for joining the webinar today on Next Generation Industry Partnerships. I'm joined here in the room by fellow staff from the board, also from the Department of Community and Economic Development, the Bureau of Workforce Development Administration, and the Apprenticeship and Training Office. So thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping items, and I believe Allison typed this in the checkbox, but we do have everyone muted right now. We will unmute everyone at the end for questions and answers. If you are on the webinar, you could introduce yourself in the chat box. Just please let us know who you are and where you're from. And if you do have any questions that come up during the presentation, please use the chat box to type them in there. At the end, when we open up for questions, we'll address all those questions that are included there as well. So just want to start off with a quick overview of what PAsmart is. So it's a new strategic approach to education and workforce development in the Commonwealth. It's really based on 4 goals, which are investing in initiatives to support economic growth, education and training opportunities, strategic coordination and alignment of public service programs, services, and funding, transforming interagency cross-sector collaboration to enhance resources, and creating better outcomes for PA students, workers, businesses, and communities. So as all of you know by this point, there are a total of $31.6 million in investments for grants in education and workforce development through PAsmart. This includes $20 million for STEM and computer science education, $7 million for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, and then $4.6 million for next generation industry partnerships. For more information on the PAsmart grant initiatives, you can visit this website here. It's www.governor.pa.gov/PAsmart-grants. On this website, you will find RFPs for all the grant opportunities, grant application materials, including links to the online platform for application submission, grant checklist, frequently asked question documents, and you'll also find webinar information for the other grant opportunities. I just wanted to highlight those dates real quick. So for the computer science and STEM grants, the Advancing Grants webinar will be held tomorrow, November 20th at 2 p.m. The Target Grants webinar will be held tomorrow, November 20th at 3:30 p.m. For the apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship grants, there will be a webinar held tomorrow, November 20th at 1 p.m. and also one next week on November 27th at 1 p.m. So if you're interested in those grant opportunities, please sign up for those webinars and join. And now I'm going to hand it over to Carol Kilco from the Department of Community and Economic Development to walk us through some background on next generation industry partnerships.
Good morning, everyone. As Michael said, I'm Carol Kilco at DCED. It's my pleasure to be a part of this webinar and to share with you some of the information about next gen industry partnerships. Some of you on the call may already know this information, but for those that are not as familiar with it, next generation industry partnerships are regional partners of business leaders within one industry that work together with all the public partners in their community, whether it be economic development, education, workforce development, and any other community partner that works to help build our businesses in our communities. Next Gen IPs really facilitate the discussion with businesses to identify their needs and coordinate the regional teams that are out there to help support our businesses. You know, the main important piece to keep in mind with these next generation IPs is that business drives the agenda, while the team, the regional team, works with the business to support their priorities. As I said, this is industry-led. It's not a public program-led initiative. We have had many years of all of us that work for the public sector going out to our businesses and saying, here I'm with L&I or DCED, and here's all of the programs we have for you. You pick and choose, but we have to make sure that our program, they have to make sure that our program meets their needs, and that's just not the best way to do this. That's why these are industry-led. They're regionally based versus jurisdiction-based. I think all of you are very familiar with that. The Commonwealth has been pushing regionally based projects and programs for a number of years, and they really do make a lot of sense. The focus is on an overall industry competitiveness and growth. It's not just a workforce development program. And that's really important also to keep in mind. There's many different issues that our businesses in Pennsylvania are facing, not just whether or not there are training dollars available. There are a lot of other issues, and they will come out during the industry partnership meetings. The regional support team responds with a coordinated approach. We've heard over the last couple of years from a few of our businesses saying, you know, we hear from all of you. We've got L&I, we have the Career Link, we have an economic development, we have community development. You're all, you know, coming at us at different times, and it's not coordinated. And this is a way in which we're able to coordinate those efforts. So who's involved with the Next Gen? Well, probably would be easier to say who's not, but here's a long list of a number of all the different groups that can be a part of a next generation IP. If you come up with another that's not listed here, I would say this is not a complete list. There could be others. So I would talk with Michael at any time during while you're putting your proposal together to see if it's someone that should be or could be involved with the Next Gen. And again, this is another list that probably isn't, you know, complete. There's a number of different accomplishments from Next Gens across the Commonwealth, but within the various different groups that should and are really should be partners within a Next Gen. We've got workforce development, work experience, internships, apprenticeships, developing the workforce pipeline, something that we all hear constantly when we're out talking with our businesses. Having education involved is so important. Having the K through 12 and the higher ed, leveraging various programs of study and career readiness, and really making sure that curriculums are aligned with business needs. But again, there could be a number of different other results from a Next Gen. And then economic development, the outreach and awareness of the region and industry, and that economic development and workforce development are aligned. Aligning those programs and those outcomes are very important to the success of all of our communities. Other pieces, you know, shared transportation costs, you know, supply chain mapping, but the business-to-business networking we find is something that a lot of people are surprised to see as a result, because, you know, you think companies of the same industry sitting at the same table might be competitors, and yes, they probably are, but they also understand that they each are addressing or facing issues and obstacles of doing business and growing, and how they might be able to help each other.
Well, thank you, Carol. Now we just want to really get into the actual grant opportunities. So there are two with Next Generation Industry Partnerships. We have Convening Grants, which are up to $45,000 per partnership for the convening and coordination of Next Generation IPs. And then also Implementation Grants, which are up to $250,000 for the implementation of business-driven priorities and action plans. Just want to highlight that the required fiscal agent for all awardees and grants is a local workforce development board. That said, the local board does not necessarily have to run the partnership or be the one convening or doing the implementation. Really, the eligible applicants can be local boards, can be labor organizations, economic development, industry associations, education, community-based organizations, libraries, nonprofits. Also did want to note that there are required letters of support for each application. There's one from economic development, education, and workforce development. So 3 total. Also want to highlight that the deadline for applications is December 14, 2018, and that's by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So really kind of getting into the specifics for each of the grant opportunities. Again, convening grants, partnerships are eligible to apply for up to $45,000. Of the award, up to 10% can be used for administration. And I did just want to highlight for eligible partnerships, convening grants are not just for new partnerships. Existing partnerships may apply, and they must demonstrate that the partnership meets the criteria listed in Appendix A of the RFP, which we are going to cover in the next slide. But for eligible uses, again, this funding is for the convening and coordination of next-gen IPs in all phases, and that's from the development and launch all the way up to sustainability. I did also want to highlight the required match, and for convening grants, that's an in-kind requirement of at least 1-to-1. So moving on to the criteria that we've developed for convening grants, there are 3 different things that we're looking for. So one is that the regional support team is committed to and understand next-gen methodology. So really ensuring that those public and community partners understand what next-gen is and understand their role in the partnership. Number 2, the proposed partnership will operate in a labor market. And Carol talked about this a little bit before, but it's really based on business location, commuter patterns, labor market information. They're regional in nature, but don't necessarily have to conform to the geopolitical boundaries that we have in place now, like local board area or prep region. We really want even down to the detail of the regions to be business driven and what works for business. And then number 3, the partnership is supported by a comprehensive regional support team of non-business partners with demonstrated commitment to each other. So again, required partners from workforce development, economic development, and education, as well as other public and community partners, are actively involved in responding to the industry's identified priorities. And they're also showing that they are contributing to the partnership in meaningful ways, whether it's through financial resources, through in-kind resources, however that is. We want to really also focus on the deliverables and what we're looking for through partnerships or awarded convening grants. So partnership building, we really want to see evidence of the regional support team's ability to respond to the partnership as a team. For business engagement, we want to see that partnerships are building strong business engagement from industry. For the launch meeting and priorities, we want to see that partnerships are holding a launch meeting and developing priorities in a timely manner. For the action plan, we want to see that partnerships are developing an action plan based on the business-driven priorities. And for continued convening, we really see that the partnership is continuing to be successfully convened over the course of time, but specifically the grant period. So moving on to the implementation grants, again, partnerships are eligible to apply for up to $250,000. Same with convening grants, they are eligible to use up to 10% for administration. And also, again, just highlighting that these are not just for new partnerships. Existing partnerships may apply for implementation grants. And again, they must demonstrate that they are meeting the criteria that's listed in Appendix B of the RFP, which once again we'll get to in the next slide. But the eligible uses, this is really for the implementation of those business-driven priorities and action plans. And again, highlighting the required match for implementation grants is a private sector cash match of at least 50%. So moving on to the implementation grant criteria, you'll see I've listed the same 3 to start from convening grants. We do want to ensure that partnerships are meeting those criteria before they move on to implementation. So I won't rehash those, but we'll start with number 4. And that's that the partnership is led by and continually attracts influential, engaged private sector leaders. So we really want to see that business members are leading the partnership, that there's broad participation from business members at meetings, and that there's evidence of business leaders really partnering to implement the priorities. Number 5, the partnership has a detailed action plan of priorities. So we really want to see the priorities outlined in a detailed fashion and include steps to really actually accomplish that priority. We also want to see the action teams are led by business and also include the relevant regional support team members. And then number 6, the partnership focuses on solutions with economic impact. We really want to see partnerships actively addressing business identified priorities that relate, again, to workforce development, economic development, and education. So focusing on the deliverables for implementation grants. For partnership building, we want to see these partnerships obviously continue to grow the regional support team and really grow the ability to respond to the partnership and their priorities as a whole. For business engagement, we want to see partnership membership continue to expand by adding business members. For implementation, we want to see the action teams are actively implementing the business-driven priorities and action plan. And for sustainability plan, we want to see the action plan really includes a strategy for operational and financial stability and sustainability for the long term. So just highlighting a few notable changes. Both the convening and implementation grants are competitive for fiscal year 18-19. Funding amounts have increased. So convening grants have gone from $25,000 to $45,000, and implementation grants have gone from $75,000 to $250,000. The required match for convening grants has been increased from a 50% in-kind to 100% in-kind, so a $1-to-$1 in-kind match. And again, both of these grant opportunities are open to all partnerships. Partnerships may apply for one or both of the grants. Unlike last year, you're not required to be awarded a convening grant to be eligible to apply for an implementation grant. And really also just highlight that, based on last year's application and review, we really tried to streamline the process overall. So we got rid of some duplicative forms that we had in the past, and we have also put the application process online, and no paper submission will be required this year. So, we really highlighted some of this already in talking about the deliverables for both grants, but really wanted to talk about some of the other expectations. So from the technical assistance side, we really want to see that all awardees are participating in technical assistance offered by the Commonwealth's NextGen team. For new partnerships, we want to see them launched within 3 to 6 months of award. We really want to see that all partnerships have a strong convener and/or convening team. And want to see, again, strong collaboration across economic development, education, and workforce development, not only at the regional level, but also within the industry. Again, focusing on sustainability, we want to see partnerships engage in creating and implementing viable sustainability plans. And lastly, focusing on the leveraging of resources. Really want to see all partnerships leverage, blend other resources. So that could include business education partnerships, teacher and the workplace grants, Engage, and WEDNet through DCD are just a few examples. So that really concludes the presentation. If you do have any questions after today, please email the PAsmart resource account at pasmart@pa.gov. Again, I would point you in the direction of the PAsmart website for more information on next generation industry partnerships and the other grant opportunities. But now we're going to open it up for some questions. Let me exit out of here and stop sharing, and we'll go to the chat box first and see what we have, if anyone has questions. We have one question here. Are the convening and implementation to be submitted in 2 separate applications or one? And that's from Cheryl Feldman and Susan Thomas. Those are 2 separate applications, and they're essentially survey monkeys that you'll submit for those different grant options. Yeah, and so the survey monkey right now is available. But there is a requirement essentially that you answer the question before you progress further. So we will have a PDF version of those questions posted online in the coming days. And then Jeff Nobili asked about the period of performance for the implementation grant. So that'll be from whenever the award is made until June 30, 2020. So we just got a question about private sector match. Can that include privately funded industry surveys? So we had a similar question to this last week, and we do want to see this as private sector match from business members of the partnership. So we certainly wouldn't discourage you from trying to secure other funding, but we do want to see the private sector match come from business members. And I believe everyone is unmuted now, so if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. We just got another one here from Dan Fogarty. Give us a second to read it. The Berks County Workforce Development Board has continued to fund advanced manufacturing come worker training that requires a 50% match from employers. Can we count the employer contribution to our 50% match under an implementation grant? If it's, I would say probably not. I'd say we need some additional time to think about that. If the training is something that the partnership is doing using the implementation funds and you're collecting that money, sure, that would be the 50%. But if it's separate training outside of the partnership, I would say no.
Okay, Mike, this is Dan. Is as you know, we've kind of continued that. So it this year was sort of was convening year, but yeah, this would definitely be coordinated under the auspices of the partnership.
Sure. Yeah. So, and we can, you know, obviously, if the partnership is awarded implementation, you know, discuss further and kind of figure out something that works.
Right.
But if it's something that the partnership is doing and using implementation funds for, if the employers are contributing, yes, that would count towards the cash flow.
Great. Thanks.
Any other questions? You don't have to type them anymore. You can feel free to talk. Anyone who's on the phone or on the webinar, feel free to jump in here. We're happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Michael, this is Dan. Just a quick follow-up to make sure I understand. On the implementation grant, when you say 50%, that's 50% of the award. So if we had a $100,000 award, you're looking for employer cash on implementation of 50%.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
50% of the entire award.
Thank you.
Michael, this is Jeff Nobilli again from Southwest Corner. Just to follow up on my last question, we had applied for the implementation grant for one of ours just a few weeks ago. Does this application take the place of that, or should we talk offline?
No, this is totally separate. So we will process that other one and get back to you. But you know, for those of you who are currently have implementation grants from last fiscal year, those will go until June 30, 2019. But these rounds of convening grants and implementation grants are totally separate from last year. And again, those will go to June 30, 2020.
Oh, great. Okay, that clears up a lot. Thanks so much.
This is Jordan Marks with a quick question. If an entity wanted to apply, when we're in the Southeast, we wanted to apply with a labor management federation for a grant, or for both grants actually, and we applied for those, does that preclude us from applying with another group who had some idea, for example, about pre-apprentice programs? Would you suggest we only apply as one entity, as one sort of partnership, and not, you know, I guess not hedge our bets, but as I say, there's another group that approached us and wanted to apply. I'm just wondering, does that disqualify us? Does that create competition, you know, unnecessarily, because we're then applying for, you know, for too many things? No, we would certainly
encourage, you know, applications from everyone. That wouldn't preclude you or create any competition. You know, that would certainly be allowable to submit separately, but then also as a part of another group.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Natalie Renew in Philadelphia. I had a couple questions about if you were applying for both the convening and the implementation grant. One is, are those two separate applications in the electronic form? And then also in terms of the timing of each grant, the performance period would be the same, but how would you demonstrate the relationship between the grants? Can there be concurrent activities, or would they need to be kind of planning activities prior to implementation if you applied for both grants?
So they're separate grant applications. I'll start off with the first part. So they are, you know, you'll fill out two different applications on SurveyMonkey, one for convening and one for implementation. And for the second question, Yeah, obviously the opportunities are kind of tied to each other. So there is certainly a partnership that is brand new may not be ready for implementation right off the bat. We will, depending on the awards that we make, we may have a second round of funding for convening or implementation grants moving forward. But there are certainly criteria that have to be met from the implementation side that would actually require a partnership to be launched and active, to be really eligible or to be funded, essentially. I wouldn't discourage you from applying if your partnership hasn't launched, but I'd say, just based on the criteria and what we're looking for in the application, I don't know how you'd be able to answer all of the questions without having done the work, to this point, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so we have another couple questions here on the chat. So will the state continue to provide facilitation services for IP launches? We are planning to, and we've also built into the RFP for convening grants that partnerships can contract directly for facilitation. So that's for Laura's question. And then Ramon has one. Can activities under a convening grant conclude before June 30, 2020? And can activities for implementation begin once convening ends? So if the funds are expended by that point, I mean, they could technically end before the June 30, 2020. So that would be the drop dead date for when they would have to end. And can activities for implementation begin once convening ends?
Could essentially delay your activities for implementation, but you're going to be limited to a set period of performance. So if you start them late, you may not have enough time to complete your activity.
And did everyone catch that? So you could hypothetically start them once convening ends, but they would still be on the same timeline essentially and have to be completed by June 30, 2020 with this fund. All right, so Katie Lentz just asked, if an IP is already launched, does it need to be recognized with a convening grant before applying for an implementation grant? No, it does not. You can, if you have launched, you can apply directly for an implementation grant. So again, kind of going back to what we highlighted in the differences, partnerships can apply for one or both, but they do not have to be awarded or previously awarded a convening grant to be eligible for implementation. As long as they meet the criteria, have launched and are able to, demonstrate that in their application. That's what we're looking for. Any other questions? Give it one more minute to see if anything else pops up. In the meantime, I will just once again highlight, if you do have questions after today's webinar, please send them to the PAsmart resource account. That is at PAsmart@pa.gov. Again, if you are looking for more information about PAsmart in general and the other grant opportunities that are out there, you can visit the website, which is www.governor.pa.gov/PAsmart-grants. And I'll just do one last call for any final questions. If anyone has any, we're happy to answer them. All right, and it looks like we don't have any more. So again, if anything does come up, please email the PAsmart resource account. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today, asking a lot of great questions. And all have a great holiday this week, and don't work too hard. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.